Hello and welcome to this video tutorial brought to you by Tutvid.com. Today we're going to take a look at using divs, some of the basic things just about divs, how we can use divs. I get so many questions every day about using divs, and some of those questions I'm going to attempt to answer in this video. And we're going to go over basically 14 steps to you using divs. 14, 12, somewhere between 10 and 14 steps, something like that. But long story short, we're going to cover a lot of what you're going to need to know just to start using divs, some of the basics. We're not going to get really technical. We're not going to go into all the finer points and all of the details and, go crazy. We're just going to, this is how it works kind of thing. So with that in mind, basically here's just we're going to create something sort of like this with a big header, sort of a body area that is centered, and then this big footer that's kind of stuck to the bottom. So with all of that in mind, I'm actually just going to close this, and I'm going to go File, New, and we're just going to create a new HTML document right here, Layout None. Alright, and the first thing I like to do when I create an HTML document is change the title. So I'm just going to change this to Start using divs exclamation point, and that's it. Well, I do actually want to save it, so I'm going to go File, Save, and I'm immediately going to choose Site Root. That's going to take me to my site root, which in this case I just set up a site, just basically for recording this. I use it for sort of some miscellaneous stuff. But you're going to want to set up a local root folder in Dreamweaver. I've got a couple videos on how to do that actually. But just setting up a site or a local root folder right here in Dreamweaver, it's the same thing. Very easy to do. And we're just going to name this, whatever. So I'm going to name it whatever. .html. It can really be anything you want. And you can see over here in the files panel we've got whatever.html that just showed up. Great, we're ready to go on and actually take a look at some divs. Alright, so step one is basically create your new HTML document. Make sure you've got it in a site, stuff like that, to keep yourself organized. The next thing you want to do is up here in this sort of toolbar that runs across the top, and your toolbar may look slightly different, don't worry. What we're looking for is either the Common or the Layout tab. Here in the Common tab, right to the left of the image icon, there's an icon called Insert Div Tag. But if we go over to the Layout section, we have the first two icons here, not the standard or expanded option thing, the actual icons. The first one is Insert Div Tag. The second one is Insert AP Div Tag. Now, or AP Div, excuse me. Now, AP Div and Div are the same exact thing. They're both just simply div tags. They are both, that's it. You type div. An AP Div, however, is absolutely positioned using CSS. Now, absolute positioning seems really cool and seems really great when you're first starting, using divs. Hey, I can drag this thing wherever I want. I can type in some numbers and have it positioned exactly where I want. But the sacrifice you pay is you can't center them, and they always are referencing the top left corner of the browser window. So regardless of screen size, that your site is going to be all over the place unless you have it smashed way up there in the corner. Another problem with AP div tags is they don't really expand automatically. They're just absolutely positioned, not based on any parent element except the browser window. So they always come off of this top corner here. That's where they reference. So my number one recommendation is don't use AP divs, just use regular divs. I never use AP divs anymore. I think I used them when I very first started using div tags. I tried doing one project with them, and then I junked them all together, redid the project with regular divs, and that's all I've used ever since. So regular divs are the way to go. Okay, so now that we know we're not going to play around with AP divs, we're not even going to waste our time. We're going to go ahead and create a regular div tag, which is as easy as selecting this Insert Div Tag icon. When we do this, and I'm going to give you a quick disclaimer, you're going to see some different things depending on whether or not you're in Dreamweaver MX, or excuse me, Dreamweaver 8, Dreamweaver CS3, or Dreamweaver CS4. So just bear with me, everything's there. It just might be a little different. You might take an extra second and just find it. But here, Insert Div Tag, we're going to insert it at the insertion point, which is basically wherever the cursor is. The only time this insert comes into vital play really is when you want to insert it at the start of a tag or before the end of a tag, and actually there's some other options that will appear there. You can insert it, after a certain tag, but not before the end of a certain tag, and it can really get kind of complex and complicated. And this second drop down / text field opens up, and basically once you start using divs, you'll understand what the deal is with this. But ultimately, you want to be able to write divs in the code view. It's just the easiest. You can have the most fine-tuned control. It's the way to go. Next we have class. You can apply a class style to this div before you even create it, and something that I virtually always do with my divs is give them an ID, which is basically giving them a name that CSS can call them. So we're going to call this wrapper. And we're going to go ahead and create a new CSS rule by selecting the new CSS rule button. Now that we've done that, this is where if you're using CS3 or before, this is going to look different. So the selector type, we want to go with compound, and I believe with CS3 and before this was called advanced, if I recall correctly. I didn't open up CS3 and check it out, but I believe it's called advanced. And that I create all of my tags with this selector type, and basically you want to give it a name. If you're targeting a tag such as the body element, you would just type right here like this, body. If you're targeting paragraph tags, you just type P, links A. So that's how you target an element. If you want to create a class, just start with a period. Just say period and then class name, whatever the name of your class is. If it's a selector or an ID, excuse me, you're targeting, all you want to do is start with pound. So pound wrapper. All right. Now the other important thing about this dialog box is rule definition. Where do you want this rule to be defined? Do you only want it to be in this document? In which case, this CSS code is just going to be placed up in the head section of this page. You probably don't want to do this. Now, in some cases, you're going to want to do it, but you're probably not going to want to for the vast majority of the time. And here's why: if you use our other option is a new style sheet file, which we're going to do. If you use a new style sheet file, you can think of it as an external style sheet file. The reason you want to do this is, let me give you a quick example. Let's say you are creating a website that's going to have 100 pages. You have a specific color for every link, for all of the paragraphs, for the background of the header, for the background of the website, all right? Or let's just say a regular background color. You present it to the client. You've got all 100 pages. They've approved it. You're great. You're ready to go. 6 months later, they come back to you and say, hey, for one day, for the 4th of July, we want to change our background color to red, or to something that's red, white, and blue, or whatever. If you haven't used external style sheets, it's going to be a little tough to just go in there and change all 100 pages. Now, if you have an external style sheet file, you just change that one CSS file and everything else is automatically updated. So I really suggest you work with these external style sheet files. They allow you to edit multiple pages, bam, in an instant at once. It's really great. So hit OK, and we're going to go ahead and choose a place to save this style sheet file. Again, I always like to just select site root to make sure I'm in my site root. And as you can see, we have our images folder over here, right up there. We're going to create a new folder. So I'm going to say create new folder, and I'm going to call it CSS. Hit enter. It's going to bring me inside of that CSS folder, and I'm just going to name this layout.css. And I'm going to save it. Now that we've done that, we get our rule definition dialog box. And without really looking into this, we're going to hit OK. And then I'm going to hit OK again. You can see what we have is just this dashed box that shows up with this little bit of text that says content for ID wrapper goes here. So whatever we want to go in there, that all can get deleted. That's just a bunch of text just to basically open the div up a little bit. If I get rid of that, the div just collapses onto itself, becomes totally flat. It's still there, but it becomes totally flat, and we would have to probably hop over into code view and just select in between the opening and closing, div tags. So I'm going to go back to the design view, and what we want to do is learn how we can then style our divs after we've placed them. Very, very easy. You basically go Windows CSS Styles. I have my CSS Styles panel open right over here. And for each of your CSS files, you have one of these. See, layout.css. That's my, the CSS file that is attached to this HTML file. I'm going to click the little plus to open it up, and I can see that the only thing in here is a rule targeting the wrapper div tag. I'm going to double click that, and hey, look at it. Look at this. We have our CSS rule definition dialog box pops right back up. Now, probably the easiest way to think of CSS if you don't know, or you can't wrap your mind around what CSS is just think of, like, if you're using Microsoft Word, when you go ahead and say, hey, look, I'm going to type this text, whatever, my resume, and then I'm going to style it using the H1 or the heading 1 style. That's basically a preset saying, look, make the font size bigger, make it bold, make it, this, make it that, yada, 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 yada. That's basically all CSS is. You can see I could target the type within this div. I could, change the font. I could change the size. Let's just, for the sake of example, make the font size 18. I'm going to hit apply, and you can see the text gets larger. All right, I'm going to delete that and hit apply. It's going to bring me back to default. But CSS is so much more than that because it's not just a matter of styling text. We are actually targeting this whole div, not just the text inside of it. This specific category is just stuff we can do with the text inside of it. Here we have background options, block options, which don't worry about them right now. You'll probably just get confused. Box options, which width and height, things like that, padding, margin. Very cool. We can add borders, and then there's list options, positioning, and extensions. Again, we're probably not really going to get into them here because we're just going to focus on these basics. So CSS is a lot more than just simply styling text. And anything we can do here, styling an ID, we can package this up into a class to be used all over the place as well. So just keep that in mind as you're working with CSS. So just to give you an example of a quick way we can edit this wrapper we placed, which right now is default, and default divs just stretch as wide as they can, and just, they automatically expand to accept more text. If I was just to, cut and paste the entire Gettysburg Address 25 times, this div would just expand to contain all of that text. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to resize this div. I'm going to go to background first, and we're going to give this a background color. Now, when you're applying background colors here, it's very important because I know some people, what they'll do is, they'll have their mock-up in Photoshop, and they'll sample a color in Photoshop and just copy and paste the hex code. Well, in Photoshop, you don't get the little pound symbol in front of your hex code, so you want to make sure you place that here. If you don't place that, it's not going to change for you, and you're going to be frustrated as all get out, and you're not going to know why your background color isn't changing. Make sure you place the pound symbol. That's just Shift 3. We're going to go 0099cc. I'm going to hit Tab, and then I'm going to hit Apply. Hitting OK commits your changes and then closes the rule definition box. I don't want to do that. Apply. Nice. We've got a very nice sort of desaturated light blue, not really light blue, sort of mid blue color. We're going to go to Box now. We're going to set the width to 250 pixels and the height to 250 pixels. We're also going to give it a margin. Now, check this out. With the padding and margin, you have these checkboxes, same for all, checked on by default. That is great if you want to just apply, let's say a 50 pixel margin to every side of this, and it's very quick. You don't have to go and do it 4 times. But I really don't want that. I only want my margin to be on the top and left in this case. So I'm going to unselect same for all. I'm going to set top margin to actually 75 and left to 75. Now, when I hit apply, we're going to see a huge difference. All right, you can see we have this 250 by 250 pixel box, and it is pushed away from the left and top edges 75 pixels. All right, great. So it's a very, very simple use of CSS rules. I'm going to hit OK. You can see it stays. I'm actually going to open this back up. Drag it right up to the middle. And now let's take a look at how we can start making our very, very simple layout. So now we're basically going to undo what we just did to this style and go ahead and change the background color of the entire document, as well as sort of tweak it a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Box, and I'm going to specifically say set the width to 100, and then I'm just going to say %. Now you can select % from the drop-down menu, but if you just type in your figure of measurement right next to your number, it's going to automatically change it. See, very cool. Height, I'm just going to delete that. We're going to basically make it auto-expand. And then margin, I'm going to hit 0, and I'm going to choose same for all. It's going to change all of them, as you see, to 0. And I'm going to go up to background and select the background color, just hit delete, and hit apply. And it just looks like it did when we initially created this div. That's great. That's exactly what I want. I'm going to hit OK now. Now what I want to do is change the background color of the entire document. And I also, you can see how the div, if you're following along, the div is pulled away from slightly the top and the left. We want this div to be rammed way up in the corner and with 0 margin anywhere. Well, this div right now, we just set it to 0 margin, so we can check that out. Box, 0 margin. So it should be all the way up against the edges. However, the body of our actual HTML document still has a little bit of padding. So what we're going to do is we're going to select layout.css, and we're going to just choose this. It looks like a little page with a plus icon. And it's new CSS rule, as you can see, the little tooltip. Select that, and it's going to say, hey, new CSS rule, what would you like me to do? Again, compound, and we're just going to do the body. Look at that. Selects body for us automatically. Rule definition right there in layout.css. Hit OK. And what we need to do is go background. We're going to choose a background color. You can really choose anything you want. In this case, let's just go back with that light blue 0099cc and hit apply. You can see, voila, all blue. but our div is still not in that corner. We're going to go to box, and we're going to set the margin to 0. 0 for all sides. Hit apply, and our box is now right up in the corner. Very, very cool. Before we close this definition box, let's hop back over to background and just dump the background color. I just wanted to show you how you can apply background color to your entire document. Delete that, hit, OK in this case, because we're ready to close that dialog box. Okay, now that we've done that, we're ready to move on to the next step. And actually, our next step is going to be open that rule definition box back up and set a background color. I neglected to do that. And let's go with a light gray. That would be F4, F4, F4. I believe, yeah, it's a very nice light gray. Hit apply. You can see just a very, very light gray. All right, now that we've done that, I'm actually going to delete this text. I'm going to select it and just hit delete. You can see that now we just have like the single dashed line running across the top of our screen. We want to place a div inside of this, though, and this div is going to be our header div. So I'm going to go insert div tag, and at this point, you can see we have a few more things. After tag, before tag, after start of tag. That's what I want. After start of tag, div ID wrapper. So basically, this is saying, look, that div that we place that ID of wrapper on, go ahead and place this div inside of that div. All right, so here, ID. We're going to name this guy just simple header and a new CSS rule. And you can see we're going to choose compound, and we're going to type pound header. Again, place it in layout.css and hit OK. Now, this div, you cannot see anything on the stage yet, and as we apply CSS changes, you're not going to be able to see changes either, because really we haven't even placed the div yet. Remember, this insert div tag box is still open. We haven't actually inserted a div tag. What we're going to do is we're going to give this a background color, and I want to use this sort of pinkish red, and that would be F90643. It's a nice sort of pinkish red color, and a box. Width is going to be 100%, which actually we really don't even have to specify, but I'm going to anyway, 100%. And the height, we want it to be about 150 pixels tall, so just 150, great. I'm going to hit apply, and you can see nothing happens because we haven't even placed the div. Hit OK. Now when we hit OK, we're going to get this solid mass of red with some text that says, hey, content for ID header goes here. I can actually delete that, and you can see this div does not collapse onto itself because we specified a height. Now, if I go to code view, and the code's actually a little small, I'm going to come up here to edit and go preferences. Under fonts here, you can actually set the size of your code. I'm going to set it to 16 point, which is the largest. Hit OK. And we have a little bit larger view of the code. You can see here, here's my div ID wrapper and the closing div tag for that. Let me just kind of set that apart. So this div tag closes off the wrapper div, and inside of that we have our header div, like so. All right. So this header div is sitting within the wrapper div, and the wrapper div you really can't technically see right now because it only expands exactly as much as it needs to, and in this case it's 150 pixels to contain that header div, which would be this big block of red. So great, at this point you know how to place a wrapper div to contain all of your divs. You even know how to place a div within that wrapper div, but what's the point of even placing the wrapper div, if we're just going to have this, div stretch all the way across the screen anyway? Well, the point is for this next div here where we actually want to center it to the size of the screen, but still have our header div stretch all the way across. So here's how we do that. I'm actually going to take you into code view, and we're going to hand code a div tag. So instead of coming up here and hitting insert div tag, we would simply hit enter or return. And we just want to type that open angle bracket and the word div space ID equals, and then an open and close parenthesis, and then a closed angle bracket. Inside of ID, we would place our ID. So in this case, I'm going to name this div body. Then all I need to do is hit enter or return a couple times, open angle bracket, and then a forward slash, and Dreamweaver automatically places div and your closed bracket. So there we go. We've just created a new div called body. If I go back to design view, obviously it doesn't look like anything because when you create a div that way, Dreamweaver doesn't automatically place that little bit of filler text inside of it. But that's no problem because we know that it's called body. I can select layout.css, choose new CSS rule, again compound, and I'm just going to type pound body. I'm going to hit OK. And what I'm going to do with body is I'm going to give it a little bit of height to start us off. and that's just basically going to allow us to see it. So here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set height to, I don't know, about 300 pixels, hit apply, and you can see that something happened back there. But it's really kind of hard to see, so let's place a background color. So I'm going to go pound, and I'm going to check out my little cheat sheet here. There'll be FEF7DA. It's a very light yellow. All right, now you can definitely see that we're down 350. Then we're going to come over here to box, and I want to set the width to 350. So I'm going to hit apply, and you can see here that we have this div pressed way over against the left. I want it centered though. We're going to take a look at centering in a moment. I'm going to get rid of the height though because we definitely know the div is there. Hit apply, and you can see, hey, look at that. The div just gone. We're going to hit OK, and I'm actually going to hop over my web browser, and I'm going to go to lipsum.com, and they have a bunch of lorem ipsum, i.e. lipsum. And I'm going to copy a bunch of it and head back over to Dreamweaver. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hop over into the code view, and here in the body tag, I'm going to place a simple open parenthesis tag and then a close parenthesis tag, and in between them I'm going to hit Command or Control V. It's going to paste in all of that lipsum, and I'm going to go back to design view, and we're going to just have a bunch of text. All right, but notice it's all sitting on that background. It's all inside of that body div. All right, so now that we've done that, we're ready to go on and center this guy. Now, centering a div tag is maybe not as intuitive as it could be. There's not really just a cut and dry, align center, nothing like that. You have to play with the margins. It's actually not very difficult at all. It's just not really easy to just go out and pick up and learn how to, center a div. Here's the easiest way that I know of to center a div. We're going to double click on the body ID up here. And this is for this yellow div. And we're going to go under box, and we're going to deselect the same for all checkbox for margin, and we're just going to simply set the right and left margins to auto. By setting the right and left margin to auto, I'm going to hit apply. It centers your div. That div is centered. I don't care how wide the screen is or how narrow the screen is, that div will remain centered. Very, very cool, and as you can see, very easy to do. One other thing we're going to do is apply a little bit of padding to this div because this text is just smashed up against the edges. So I'm going to apply 20 pixels of padding to every side. Hit apply. You can see that what it does here is not really apply padding so much as just go ahead and widen the div and force the content to stay back, which is in essence padding, but padding really, we don't want it to expand, the div. That's just what it does though, so it's something you need to keep in mind. And if you're working with web development, web design, you have exact to the pixel measurements you're working with, and this kind of thing will throw your entire design off. So what you need to know is that you're going to need to compensate with the width of your div to bear in mind or to compensate for the padding. In this case, I'm adding 20 pixels of padding to the left and right. That's going to add 20 pixels of size to both sides. So we need to shave 40 pixels overall. 20 plus 20 is 40. We need to shave 40 pixels of width. So we need this to be 310 pixels. So now we have 310 pixels of div, 20 pixels of right padding, and 20 pixels of left padding, which equals 350 pixels of total divness. All right, after that, we're going to go down to border, and we're going to deselect all the same for alls. And under right, we're going to type solid. Tab a couple times. Under left, I'm going to type solid. We're only applying this border to the left and right sides of the div. You can apply it to all sides if you want, but in this case, I'm just going to apply it to the left and right. The width is going to be 5 pixels. And the color is going to be pound 252525. Pound 252525. Tab, and I'm going to hit OK, and you can see that we have a nice border running down both sides of our body. So the last thing we want to do is go ahead and place a footer. Now, placing this footer, it's going to be kind of one of these big footers that's stuck to the bottom. There are a bunch of different ways you can create footers. There are sticky footers, and there are just, different ways you can play with footers. And the footer can really be an important part of the website. We're not going to talk about all that nonsense now, though. This footer is going to be stuck to the bottom, however, not using any kind of special technique or method or CSS or anything like that. It's going to be stuck to the bottom just strictly because of the fact that our body tag is being told to have 0 margin, 0 padding. So you can see here the body div is just mashed against the bottom. We haven't done anything special to the body div to tell it, hey, go ahead, stick to the bottom. No. So it's just going to be like that. So that's going to be pretty cool because that's kind of the effect that I'm shooting for. I'm going to come up here and choose Insert Div Tag. I could go Code View and type it in. However, just to run over something else here in the Insert Div Tag dialog, we're going to use Insert Div Tag. In here, I'm going to say insert after a tag, and the tag we're going to insert after is the div tag called body, right there. I'm going to give this an ID of footer, and I'm just going to hit OK to place it. All right, and down here below we can see we have this div. Content for ID footer goes here. I'm going to delete that little bit of text. We don't want that. And then I'm going to select layout.css, and I'm going to create a new CSS rule. So I could have created a CSS rule when I initially created the div, but if you don't, you can always go back and just choose new CSS rule. We're going to say compound and just make sure pound footer is our selector. Again, the rule definition is happening in layout.css. Hit OK, and we're going to go ahead and set the background color to be the same as our border, pound 252525, very dark gray. And the box size, well, we're going to set the width to 100%. Again, this isn't really necessary because divs by their nature are 100% wide. That is 100% of their parent element. And the parent element of this footer is this div called wrapper. Not the div just sitting above it, body. That's inside of the same div as this footer div. So this footer div is a child of wrapper. The body and header are also children of the wrapper div, because they're located inside of it. So because the wrapper div is 100% wide, this footer div will also be 100% wide. Height, 250 pixels I think will be great. Hit OK, and check it out. We've got a nice thick footer that we can put whatever we wanted. We can put a list of links, we can put images, we can put whatever you want in there. So I'm going to hit F12 now, and it's basically going to say, look, you got to save your changes to whatever.html. We say, okay, go ahead. And it's also going to say some other files need to be saved. The other file will be this layout.css file. Yeah, go ahead and save that as well. Here we are in Mozilla Firefox, and we have this sort of very, very simple web layout that we just created. And really, you should be able to create that in 5 minutes. Practice it, work with divs, and just something simple like this, literally less than 5 minutes it would take me to throw something like this together. Now, obviously, it took us a little bit longer today, but we've gone through and talked about a lot of the important things that you're going to need to know when you're using divs. And the reason that I like to go over this kind of stuff is because working with coding when you don't understand how it's working can be the most frustrating thing on the face of the earth. It can be so frustrating. It's like dealing with some other things that I don't understand in life, and you probably don't understand, or your friends don't understand. Just when you don't understand what's going on, it can be really frustrating because you don't even know where to go next to make X, Y, or Z happen. So it's good to know why certain things are happening and how you can then go ahead and remedy those things. But this is just a very simple overview of creating divs, creating regular divs, the difference between divs and AP divs, centering divs, applying borders to divs, padding, margin, size, background colors, all kinds of things like that. And of course, zeroing off that margin to your initial body tag to get all of your stuff jammed into the corner and all the way flush against the edges of the browser window. So that's it for this one. I'm going to shut up. I'm going to shut it down. And that is my 14 or so steps to using divs. Not really, all that well organized. This is step 1, 2, 3. But that is how you use divs. I hope you picked up a thing or two. And if you're brand new to divs and CSS, I know you picked up quite a bit. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you very much for sticking around and watching this full, 20-25 minutes of video. And I hope to catch you around, and go check out the website. That's www.tutvid.com for more great and free video tutorials.